Well, welcome back, my stay homies. We got a real fun one today. It's gonna be a palm tree. Now, there's gonna be several things you're gonna draw where you're gonna need to know how to do this. So, everybody, come on, grab your crayons, and let's get going on this. So, this is very, very easy to draw, and it will not take us long. Let's go over what we're gonna use today. We have an orange crayon, a brown crayon. I have two greens, a light green and then a regular green, or we'll say dark green. And then what I have is a blue followed by an indigo. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. I'm gonna grab my orange crayon right now, and I'm gonna decide how tall I want the actual trunk to be. Now the trunk is very squatty on this type of palm I'm gonna do, which is a pineapple palm. And so it gives it kind of character. You can make it sort of rounder or thinner, but this is kind of fun because we could fit the whole thing on the page instead of this long skinny palm tree with a bunch of, unused space. So what I do first is I decide how tall I want it to be. So I take my orange crayon and just decide the height. There we go. Then I kind of make the round shape out of it. Now don't make it perfect. Look at that. There we go. You can see that it's a little wider at the bottom than at the top. Okay, next, let's go ahead and up here, let's put like a little circle. From here, we're gonna start bringing out the palm branches. I usually think of like spider legs when I do these, and you want them to kind of come out at every angle. And imagine this, that a palm leaf, it has weight, so whereas it would come out in a straight line, it doesn't. It gets heavy, and then it starts to hang down. And so that's what I'm trying to get with all of these. So let's say I'm doing one that's going up, and then I'll make it kind of hang down, and then like that. Now, you don't want to make them too perfect or even. And that's kind of the only tricky part in it, is not to get too caught up in that. So you see how quickly I developed those. Once I felt comfortable with the idea, I just let them go out. See how it looks kind of like a daddy long leg? So now I just connect this with another little bump. Perfect. All we have left to do with this orange crayon is to determine the sort of grain or kind of scales that come off on the trunk, and these are created by the layers of palm leaves as they grow out, and we trim them, or else this would just be a big crazy bushy palm. So what I'm keeping in mind here is that this is a round object, so I need to make sure that the pattern I put on it reflects the roundness. So as I'm closer to the edge, I'll be rounder. As I get more near the middle, I'll have straighter lines. So watch this. See that? I'm curving outward, a little bit outward, more outward this way, this way. Now I'll go the other way, and I'll just try to do that same thing. See how already that gives it a sense of roundness? We already feel like we can go up and give it a hug, although that would probably be kind of pokey. Okay, before we relieve ourselves of this orange, let's go ahead and color it in. I'm using the edge of my crayon, and so that I can cover some good space. That's how I'm able to cover so much so quickly. Doesn't matter if we lose a little bit of our lines. I know where they are. I didn't color so hard that I lost them completely. Alrighty, let's go ahead and grab our brown crayon. So with this brown crayon, let's go ahead and really define this once more. So here we go. Those same crosshatch lines we did in the step right before. Perfect, perfect. And the great thing about this is you can only get better from here. And that's the honest truth. I did not always used to be a good artist. I used to be quite a bad one. Thing is I just stuck with it for quite a while. And you keep doing, you keep pushing, you keep going, and before you know it, you're full blown. What I'm doing here is I'm sort of preferring the bottom half and creating sort of this crescent shading heading towards here so that the orange is still showing. And I'm just using this brown, and I'm going a little harder as I start to get more towards the bottom and this edge. You'll see that it makes it feel like it's sort of 3D. Okay, as a last step here, you can take your brown crayon and give it a little outline, just like a rough one. Doesn't have to be crazy. You could even go over some of these. A light one out here. I'm always mindful of how hard I press my crayon down for what I'm doing, so that's more than good enough for right now. Let's go ahead and pop up to the leaves. So I'm gonna start with my light green crayon, because it's much easier to go over the light green crayon with the darker one. It's not easier the other way. Here's what I'm doing. I think of each of these as being sort of these razor blades going out, or like sharp teeth. And I don't necessarily pick up my crayon each time. I sort of start to get into a zigzag motion, kind of using the crayon on its edge. So here we go. And you can see what I mean. And as I follow a curve, I'll sort of mirror that curve. And then I'll sort of do the same thing on the other side. Now, if you need to do this in 2 passes, or sometimes what you'll see me do is I'll go back and I'll say, well, let me accentuate these leaves now that I, can see them clearer. But I think it's much easier to just go through and kind of do this zigzag and then add the definition on your leaves after. Because what it does is it helps you really fill the space that's inside of the leaf so that it doesn't look too thin. We want this to look like a nice, healthy plant. Look how dense all this area is, and then we really see that it's a plant out there at the edges. Let's do this one. So with this one, I'm going to imagine it's kind of starting to lean out at me. So you can change the direction of some of these as you want. Now, it's not a huge deal, how you do it. Pretty much 80-90% of the time on accident. It'll look awesome if you just keep with this sort of pattern. But notice how I'm going up here, then I'm going along this way, and it kind of makes it feel like the different branches are going different directions. So let's go ahead into the next one. Still with this back and forth, back and forth. As I get to the top here, maybe I'll have this one feel like it goes backwards. And again, only do what you're comfortable with, but notice that just having a big massive green with these little spiky edges is all it takes. That's the beauty of art. You only need to do so much to really be quite effective. So there we go. Okay, let's go over and do these ones. I'm gonna do this one that's coming right at me first. And of course, you probably already know this, but your leaves do not have to be, leaf for leaf like mine. Your stems do not have to go in the same angles or anything like that. So please don't feel obligated to be a perfectionist here. Great thing is all these palms are going to come in different shapes and sizes. And I encourage you to actually draw a few of these. Really practice it. Get it under your crayon hand here. Because when I first started drawing, all I really did draw was just things that I enjoyed drawing, like characters from cartoons and things like that. And hey, that's fun stuff, and that's probably why I still draw today, because I never stopped really doing that. I never kind of grew up with the subject matter that I like to draw. But the further along I went in my art journey, the more I found that, hey, with my characters and everything, it would be very helpful if I could make a nice background, and it makes everything all the much more believable. And so I started to get better at looking at things in the background. And so that's where studies like this come in real handy, because once you understand this and realize we're not working from a photograph, we're just working with how the idea of the plant works, then it's really not that hard to decode how to do things in nature. So here we go. We have everything covered with our light green. Let's go ahead and pick up our next green. What I'm going to do with this is I'm going to choose mostly one half of each leaf. So looking at going this way and that way. And I'm going to choose the bottom half in most cases. And I'm just going to press really hard and give it a little bit extra saturation. Here we go. And in areas, if it gets darker as it comes out, that's totally fine. But you can see how resistant a crayon is, you know, once you take one color and go over the other. We're doing this to try to get accent and differentiation in our greens. Also, this is contributing to the shading. Notice how loose I can be here. I'm mostly trying to just really exhibit enough pressure to get a nice result. Also, these marks I'm making, they're getting quite rough, right? But look how cool all these little things look. They all look like leaves to me, so big thing, don't overthink it. Look how fast we can do this and take this as an exercise to see how many different ways you can do this and shade it. Now, up here, I'll not do as intense because I want to make it feel like there's somewhat of a light source, so I'm going to lighten my crayon and leave some of that to be brighter so it's a little bit denser down here. Now if you like, you can just sort of color down here because I know down here is going to be dense. I'm even going to color a little bit onto the top of the tree right here, just to give a little shadow going down. Went a little outside the lines, that's okay. Okay, so from here, you can give any stems a little bit of a pop. And by that, I just mean tracing over them. It'll just give them a little bit more of a green tint. And you don't have to do it, you know, strictly. There we go. Alrighty, so next, I'm gonna go ahead and grab my blue crayon. With this, we're gonna go in and put even more shadow in. Start in the core. So here's your deepest shadows. And the reason it's your deepest shadow is because it's very hard for light to get here. I'm even gonna bring some of the shadow down to here. And as I come into this side, I'll bring some of the shadow into those sort of cracks we have there. So see how that gets much more 3D now. Very quickly, this starts becoming a very professional looking drawing. And who would have thought that taking this pure blue afterwards would do the trick? Well, that's the great thing about art and being daring with it. Notice that what I'm doing is still choosing the bottom edges of my leaves. And mostly really making it dense towards the core. Back here I'll do a little bit, but I'll lessen it up. You could even use the side of your crayon, give a little shading here and there. If you just want to get an edge, like this one coming at me, you'll get better at this. I know that the first one, it might be a little tough, and you might be like, man, that does not look like Kenny's at all, but hey, little practice makes perfect. You know, if you just have the leaves there to start with, then hey, that's just genuinely amazing. What I'm gonna do now is a last step. I'm gonna take my indigo and I'm gonna put a shadow under just to really set it down. This is like bonus. And basically I'm just gonna have the sunlight, say, being right above it, so it's just pushing a shadow here. So I do a little bit all below it and then coming out kind of in little strands to indicate the leaves. But notice how they go out sort of in different directions like that. That's tricky, but you'll get it with practice. And then I'll just go lightly and I'll just mimic some of the shapes I was doing up there. There we go. Take this same indigo, give any last darkening you want, so you could even shade over brown. Great thing is usually the darker colors go over almost anything. So you can take crayons and in, you know, most cases, go from light to dark. So now I can go in the core, give any of the darkest shadows. Maybe just a little bit here and there. This is really up to each and every palm to kind of get into how deep you want your shadows to go, which and where, but notice how bright something dark looks next to something originally green. So I do go for an amount of that. And then there's just a lot of going with the flow, you know, like the more you do this, you'll actually start to see it a little bit. And I'm not going for perfect by any means. I'm just trying to get a loose idea onto the page of a nice, you know, dimensional plant. Lastly, I'll take this darker green and I'll just kind of color over this. And look how nicely it'll blend. And I'll just sort of further set the stage by giving it a nice green bottom. And it also helps show how bright green the bright green is up there. I'll go lighter as I get about to right here, and if you can, take it as a little challenge to just try to fade out. See how I just went softer? So, nice and firm, nice and firm. And then, as I get, oh, that's my piece of tape right there. Alright, and as I get going, there we go. And I'll just go softer, softer, softer. So with that, I think we have a great tree here. I suggest you practice it over and over again, and please, I encourage you to share your drawings with me and get your friends and family to get going on it with you. I want you to have a gallery of these hanging in your home. So, if this was completely awesome and fun, and you feel just still in the mood, hey, follow that link, keep it going. And until the next time I see you, please doodle on.